What up, tubers? Bunny here alongside my trusty co-pilot Wormy, Malcreed. And in today's video, we're back at Geo Flight Simulator, starting a brand new season. So without further ado, let's get into it. Hey Wormy, you mind if I just do a little bit of flying in this biplane? Malcreed. Okay, fair enough. Let's go for takeoff. So, in this Geo Flight Simulator video, we are starting a brand new season called the Geofs Games. So, this is probably the only sport remaining that is not going to be affected by that stupid virus going about, COVID-19. At least that virus shouldn't affect the Geofs Games. As long as this bunny doesn't get it, huh? So, simply stated, the Geofs Games is really more a series of tests rather than games. But the idea is that I'll be testing several planes throughout the second season of my Geo Flight Simulator video series. Basically, I'm treating this kind of test series like a competition. You know, during the tests, each of the airplanes get a certain amount of points, and then whichever plane receives the least amount of points at the end of that competition is then eliminated from the games. And if there are two planes at the end of each event that are tied for last place, then the plane that had the better performance that event will be the one to continue on in the games. And Wormy, I think that just about sums up how these events are going to go down this coming season, Geo Flight Simulator. And this season is going to last only through the end of this year. Once I do the final event in December, that's going to conclude the season of the Geofs Games, so season 2 will then come to an end. And then next year I would begin the third season of Geo Flight Simulator. Malcreed. Well, Wormy, whichever plane wins the competition is going to be the plane that I favor to choose in future seasons of Geo Flight Simulator. So, for example, this biplane here, this is going to be one of the competitors in this year's games. If this biplane were to somehow win the overall competition, if it were to be the champion, then I would select to load this biplane up. I would choose to fly it whenever I record a Geo Flight Simulator video. That makes sense? Malcreed. So Wormy, I'll go ahead and land this airplane and then we will show the viewers the fields that we have in store for this season. Oh, that wasn't butter. Brace, Wormy, brace. Ugh. Man, if only I could be a bit better with my landings. Malcreed. So, kicking off our competing fields for this season is an air show favorite. Wormy? Malcreed. I want to say that there are more of these airplanes than there are of any other aircraft in the world today. Malcreed. Now this one is a common airliner that you'll find at the airport for sure. Wormy? Malcreed. If Christopher Columbus were still alive, he would sure wish he had this ride. Wormy? Malcreed. This one looks like Captain Joe's ride. What's this one, Wormy? Malcreed. That's right. The Queen of the Skies herself. Wormy, I reckon that half of the airplanes that land over in the Emirates are of this enormous type. Malcreed. Because the competition could use a turboprop airplane. Wormy? Malcreed. You know, the Army Corps from which this airplane came from produced quite a few Apollo astronauts. Didn't you know, Wormy? Mercury. Now this plane is the first one that you will probably fly when you first log in to Geo Flight Simulator. Wormy? Mercury. The package that you just received not too long ago is likely to have flown on this type of airplane at some point in the delivery process. Wormy? Mercury. Okay, Wormy, is that everything to say to introduce this new season of Geo Flight Simulator? Great. Alrighty then. Well then, without further ado, let us welcome you to Miami, Florida for our first competition, the Takeoff Challenge. So, if I may control this helicopter somewhat. So, over here, this end of the runway here is going to be the starting line. Now the threshold at the other end of the runway, that is the finish line. Now you get points if you take off before any of these runway marks you see here. Great. 0 points if you take off after the 1,000 foot mark. You get 1 point if you take off within this area, 2 if you take off within this area, and 3 if you take off within this area. Great. Oh, and if you don't take off before the finish line, then that is going to be an automatic disqualification. However, I don't imagine that there'll be any airplanes that fail to take off before that threshold. Great. Now, points are also going to be assigned by how quickly the airplane is moving at the time of takeoff. No points are going to be awarded if the airplane takes off at speeds above 250 knots, because that is the maximum speed limit for any aircraft traveling under 10,000 feet. 1 point is assigned if you take off at speeds between 200 and 250 knots. 2 points awarded for speeds between 150 and 200. 3 for speeds between 100 and 150, 4 points if at speeds between 50 and 100, and then 5 points if you can take off at speeds below 50 knots. Now the distance points are gonna be just bonus points, if you will, because of the fact that many aircraft may not be able to take off within the distance of just 1,000 feet. I mean, there may be some aircraft, but with some of the larger aircraft that need the higher speeds, it's obviously not going to happen. Still, there are 8 points up for grabs in this event. So without further ado, Wormy, if you would be so kind as to land the helicopter for me so that we don't crash and die. I'd hate to see what would happen if you died. Let us go ahead and begin this competition. Mercury. So, in the Geofs Games, Wormy is going to be the pilot, and I am going to be the commentator. So, Wormy, if you would go ahead and kick off this first event with the pit special. Mercury. So, the pit special is off, the biplane is off. And are we going to have rotation? Oh, we've had rotation before this first mark. Wormy gets 3 points, and I will need to review the speed of the aircraft at liftoff, just to indicate at what speed he was going, and to see how many points this biplane gets awarded because of the speed and distance at which he took off. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to be trying to do commentary stuff, but this commentary stuff is not very commentary-like. Why am I trying to mash so much commentary stuff together? All this commentary stuff. How about commentary on commentary? Oh, great! Okay, sorry, Wormy, sorry, Wormy. and crosses the finish line, and the plane will move on to the next event should it not get in last place. And up next is the Piper Cub. Let's see how this baby does. So the pull-up is going on right away. We have had liftoff just before the first mark, so that's 3 points right there. The Piper Cub has taken off before reaching a speed of 50 knots, so it has achieved the total pointage amount of 8 points, and it will definitely go on to the next event should it reach the end of the runway. Come on, Wormy! Can't you fly this darn thing any faster? I got other airplanes to show before it gets dark over here. Agreed. Okay. Oh, what's this? Wormy has decided to let the airplane dive, perhaps to give it a little extra speed as it races its way toward the finish line. And let's see what happens. Reaching 120 knots. Here it is. 115 knots, and he pulls up, and he has crossed the finish line. I've just showed this footage just to testify that the plane has reached the finish line, and it will definitely move on in the competition. Up next is the Cessna 172. Flaps are being deployed, and if aircraft have flaps used for takeoff and landing, they are allowed to use these flaps. So the plane's off to a good roll. He's now pitching upwards. And let's see. Does not take off before the first mark. Took off after 50 knots. Let's see. He is going to receive a total of, 2 plus 4, 6 points. The Cessna 172 gets a total of 6 points and will move on in the competition as long as those 6 points are not last place. Okay, the flaps have been tucked in. All that Wormy's got to do at this point is fly the plane over the finish line, and then this plane can move on in the competition. Oh, what's this? Wormy's doing a barrel roll. Oh my golly. Wormy, you did not just do that barrel roll and survive. Milkery. Oh yeah, but he did it. He survived. The plane's still flying. It's crossed over the finish line, and it will continue on in the competition should it not get last place. Up next is the F-16 Fighting Falcon, and it is off very quickly, and it's not going to take off before the first mark, but it took off before the second mark. I'll need to check what its velocity was at liftoff, but as long as it reaches the end of the runway, and as long as it did not get last place, it shall move on in the competition. And Wormy, you are violating the speed limit. Up next is the Boeing 737-700 with the Southwest Airlines livery painted on it. The flaps have been put down, and it's throttling up to 100%, and it is on its way. Okay, the elevators have been pushed down a little bit. I know from experience that this aircraft can start to rotate on its own once you reach 100 knots. Okay, it's not going to receive any distance points, but it is now rotating 150, just before 150 knots, and the plane will continue on in the competition, assuming it can reach the finish line and it doesn't get last place. Good job, Wormy. Agreed. And we shall see what happens with the 737. Up next is the McDonnell Douglas MD-11, and flaps are being deployed for this thing. Are flaps being deployed for this thing? Great. Okay, cool. Flaps are being deployed. You just tried to pull the switch the wrong way, didn't you? Great. Okay, sorry. Up, he throttles up, and he's off. Let's see what happens. He's probably not going to get the distance points, but let's see if he can get the, oh, he's tucking the flaps in just a little bit, probably to encourage less drag. Okay, 125. Oh, he's pulling up. Oh, tail strike, that is a 1-point deduction. Wormy, that is going to be a 1-point deduction that you did the tail strike. And it took off at speeds under 150 knots, so we'll see what happens. We'll see if this plane is able to move on in the competition. But it does cross the finish line, so... Up next is the Q400. Its flaps are down, ready for takeoff, and Wormy is off. Let's see if it's able to take off before the 1,000 foot mark. So it's at 50 knots now. Let's see, it just lost 1 point, so it's down to 2 distance points. 1 distance point. Wormy's rotating 0 distance points. But he took off before the 150 mark, so he is going to receive 3 points there, right? 3 points. No, 1, 2. Yeah, 3 points. He's going to receive 3 points. Am I forgetting my own point system, Wormy? Malgrid. Yeah, you're right. It's probably a bad thing if I'm forgetting my own point system. And it's crossed the finish line. Let's see if it can advance on to the next round. Up next is the Boeing 747-8, the Queen of the Skies. The flaps are going down on Captain Joe's ride because this is a cargo lux plane, and if you watch Captain Joe's videos, you'll know that he flies one of these airplanes. It's a 747 and it's cargo lux. Oh, and engines are throttled up to 100. He is off. Wormy, not Captain Joe. Captain Joe isn't in this video, so yeah, I don't know what I'm saying. Let's see, exceeds 100 knots. He's not gonna take off before 1,000 feet. No distance points at all. Let's see, it's not gonna rotate before, it's not gonna lift off before 150 knots. Okay, between 150 and 200 knots, that is going to be 2 points. It's not gonna look too good for this aircraft. However, there are other aircraft that still have to compete. It is likely that it could still advance in the competition, but we will find out later on. Okay, it's 4:30 in the afternoon and we have only 2 competitors remaining in this event. And the first one that we will do is the Airbus A380. The flaps are coming out. You can tell that it's starting to get a little bit dark over here. And the A380 is off. It is probably not going to take off before 1,000 feet. It's definitely not going to take off before 1,000 feet. The wings are actually too short. They're not wide enough to allow for the optimal amount of lift given this size and aircraft. Okay, it's past that point. Yeah, I think I can take off before. I think Wormy can take off. I think Wormy can take off before the end of the runway. It's past 150 knots. He's rotating. He's taken off. So it's going to be 2 points for the A380. It's probably going to be quite low in the scores for this competition. Are the gears deploying? Yeah, they are, just very slowly. And we just crossed the finish line, so the Emirates, should it not be in last place, it should hypothetically be able to continue on in the competition. Alright, it's nearly 5 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock p.m. over here in Miami. Runway lights have started to turn on. Sun's gonna be setting sometime soon. There it is right there. And we are down to our last competing plane for this month's event, the Concorde. So Wormy, there are no flaps to deploy, so you can go ahead and launch at any time. And the Concorde is off. I expect this thing, if my hypothesis is correct, I expect this thing to be the plane that goes in last place. It's not going to take off before the 1,000 foot mark. And it's definitely not going to take off before 200 knots. In fact, here we are, 150. Oh, Wormy is rotating. Oh, it did take off before 150 knots. Oh, that is going to be interesting. We are going to see how this airplane turns out. We're going to see how this plane fares in the point standings, and this is unprecedented. Well, maybe it's not unprecedented, I'm not sure, but, well, we'll see how it does. It did better than I was anticipating. So stand by for the point standings. Well, folks, it is after 6 p.m. here in Miami, Florida, and the results from the officials are in. So here is the scoring. Well, great. Why, yes, Wormy, we are going to determine a winner of this event. In fact, the winner of this event is going to be the first plane to compete in next month's event. So, this one was a little difficult to determine because we have a tie for first place. But we have determined that the winner of the Takeoff Challenge is the Piper Cub, Mercury! That's right, it's the plane that took forever to fly from one end of the runway to the other. And there's the sun as it sets. Let's see, I'm going to do a loop-de-loop. Is that fine with me? Mercury. Ooh, I don't know if that was a good idea. I don't know if that was a good idea.
Stall.
It was a good idea. So, yeah, this plane is the winner. That was a victory loop-de-loop. And now it is time to determine which plane is going to be eliminated from the game. So, I'm going to go ahead and land this aircraft. Mercury. Yeah, you're right. I should probably do like a little bit of a go around or something. So, there were 4 airplanes, as you can see from the results board, there are 4 airplanes that each received a total of only 2 points, and thus they are tied for last place. So, it was a little tricky to determine which plane was the one to be eliminated from the games. However, officials have ruled that the other 3 aircraft, namely the 747, the A380, and the Concorde, those 3 aircraft have earned both of their points, whereas the MD-11 received 2 points as a result of having lost one of them due to penalty reasons. In other words, the fact that the MD-11 had received a penalty for having the tail strike upon takeoff is cause for its elimination. The MD-11 has been eliminated from the games. The rest of the planes continue to fly and will live to compete another day. So here is one last look at the MD-11 before it leaves the competition. Agreed. And this is going to do it for this episode of Geo Flight Simulator, this episode of the Geofs Games. So this coming month I'm going to be a little bit busy, so there's going to be a few less videos that I'll be posting this month. However, I do know for certain that I will be back for Good Friday, and I'm thinking of creating a new airplane in Kerbal Space Program to celebrate Good Friday and celebrate Easter. So I do not plan to have a Geo Flight Simulator episode in April, but we will be back in May over in Orlando, Florida for the second competition, the Altitude Challenge. Namely, how high can these aircraft fly before they stall? But that's the stuff planned for the future. That concludes this episode of Geo Flight Simulator. That concludes this video. So for Wormy Cat Pellier, I'm the Imaginative Astro Bunny. We hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks for watching. See you all in the next video. India Alpha Bravo, Mercury, checking out.